The train was full that evening, the kind of crowded ride where every movement felt magnified, every sound louder than it should have been. I had taken that same route countless times before, staring out of the smudged windows, trying to pretend the journey was just another ordinary routine. But that night, the air felt different. There was a charge in it, a heaviness I couldn't quite name, as if something invisible was waiting, holding its breath. I stood by the door, pressed too close to strangers, the rhythm of the tracks beneath me lulling and jarring all at once. Then it happened, a simple brush of a hand against mine. For a second I thought it was nothing, a mistake, the kind of accidental touch that happens when bodies are packed too tightly together. But the moment lingered. His fingers didn't pull back. Instead they stayed, grazing lightly as if testing whether I would move away. I didn't. It felt like a current, sharp at first, then spreading like warmth up my arm and straight into my chest. My breath caught. It had been so long since anyone's touch had made me feel alive. So long since something so small had the power to stir everything I had locked away. Hunger, longing, ache, they rushed through me all at once, like doors I had kept shut had suddenly burst open. I glanced sideways, trying to catch a glimpse without being too obvious. His eyes were already on me, steady, calm, but lit with the same spark I felt inside. In the noise and chaos of the train, that connection felt louder than everything else. My skin burned where our hands nearly touched, and the whole world shrank to that single point of contact. Every stop came and went, people shuffling in and out, but I stayed rooted in that spot. The warmth of his presence pulled me in like a tide, holding me still when I should have moved. I told myself it was nothing, just a stranger's accidental touch, but deep down I knew better. Accidents didn't feel like destiny. They didn't make your heart race or your knees weak. His hand shifted slightly, fingers brushing more firmly this time. My pulse raced, the kind of touch that asked without words, that begged for permission in silence, and the permission came not from anything I said, but from the fact that I didn't move away. I let it stay. I let myself feel it. It was reckless, foolish even, but in that moment the idea of right and wrong disappeared. All that mattered was that something inside me had woken up, something I had convinced myself was gone. The hunger for closeness, the craving for warmth, the aching reminder that I was still capable of being touched and undone. As the train swayed, our hands pressed closer together, almost hidden in the crowd. It was so small, so seemingly innocent, yet it carried more weight than words could hold. No one else noticed. No one else saw how the world had shifted for me in that exact second. But I felt it, every nerve alive, every breath deeper, every thought consumed by the stranger whose skin now lingered against mine. The city outside blurred by, lights flashing past the windows, but I didn't see them. My focus was locked on the quiet storm building inside. The warmth of his hand was nothing short of a promise, not a loud one, not a bold declaration, but a whisper that said life wasn't finished with me yet. That passion wasn't dead. That love could spark in the most unexpected of places, even in the crowded silence of a train. I had lived years without this feeling, years of moving through days numb and unlit, believing that the fire inside had burned out forever. But with that one touch, the flame roared back to life. It was frightening in its intensity, and yet it felt like coming home. I wanted to close my eyes and surrender to it completely, to let myself drown in what I had denied for so long. When the train slowed and the doors opened again, I half expected him to step off, to leave me standing there with nothing but the memory of a fleeting touch. But he didn't. He stayed, his body still close, his hand still near mine, the unspoken electricity still crackling in the space between us. And that was the moment I knew nothing would be the same after this. Even if it ended there, even if we never spoke a word, that touch had already changed me. It had broken something open. It had reminded me of everything I thought I had lost: passion, desire, and the simple, undeniable truth that love, in all its raw forms, can find you anywhere, even on a crowded train. That touch was not an accident. It was the beginning of everything. The first touch could have been dismissed as an accident, a fleeting brush between strangers lost in the press of a crowded train. But it didn't fade the way accidents do. It lingered, charged, as if the air itself refused to let it go. That touch became a tether, invisible but unbreakable, pulling us closer without a single word exchanged. The silence between us grew heavier with every passing second. It wasn't the kind of silence that separates people. It was the kind that binds them, wrapping around us like a secret. I could feel it in the way his breath shifted near mine, in the way his eyes never left me. That silence held questions, confessions, and promises all at once, as if the things we didn't say carried more weight than anything we ever could. Our bodies were close, pressed by the sway of the train, yet the nearness felt deliberate, chosen. My heartbeat thudded in my chest, so loud it seemed impossible that others around us couldn't hear it. Every inch of space became dangerous, every second stretched with the ache of wanting to close it completely. His gaze locked onto mine, and in that stare was a raw hunger, a recognition I hadn't felt in years. It was as though he was seeing straight through the walls I had carefully built, stripping them away with nothing but his eyes. Desire pulsed between us, forbidden yet undeniable. Neither of us moved away. Instead, the stillness turned into a storm brewing beneath the surface, a dangerous mix of restraint and surrender fighting for control. I could taste it in the air, the sweetness of temptation, the heat of possibility. My skin prickled with anticipation, every nerve alive, waiting for what might come next. When his hand shifted again, not by accident, but with intention, the world around me ceased to exist. The laughter, the chatter, the shuffling of feet, they blurred into nothing. All that mattered was the steady rhythm of his touch against mine, fingers brushing with a confidence that left me trembling. It was gentle yet commanding, as if he knew that one more move would undo me entirely. The train rocked, and with it our bodies pressed closer. My shoulder brushed his chest, and the contact sent a shiver racing down my spine. His breath mingled with mine, warm, steady, intoxicating. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Words would have broken the spell, shattered the fragile tension that was holding us both captive. Instead, I let the silence speak for me. I let my body betray the truth I had hidden for so long. I wanted this. The intensity frightened me, but not enough to stop it. It had been years since I had felt this alive, years since desire had taken hold of me with such force. And here it was, rising from a stranger's touch, burning hotter with every heartbeat. It was madness, but it was also freedom, the kind of freedom that comes only when surrender feels like destiny. I knew the danger. I knew that crossing this line meant stepping into a place where reason no longer ruled. But his eyes never wavered, his presence never faltered, and I found myself drawn deeper into him with each stolen glance. The silence between us turned into its own kind of language, a dangerous one that spoke of everything forbidden yet everything we craved. It wasn't love yet. It wasn't even lust in the simplest sense. It was something sharper, something raw the moment before the fall, when gravity has already claimed you, but you're still suspended in the air. That tension, that waiting, became unbearable, and yet I never wanted it to end. The train slowed at the next station, doors opening, people moving, but neither of us moved. We stayed there, suspended in that charged space, unwilling to let go. His hand tightened slightly around mine, a subtle claim, a silent dare. I held on, answering him with nothing but the steady pressure of my own fingers against his. It was reckless, it was dangerous, and yet it felt more real than anything else in my life. In that moment, surrounded by strangers, I belonged to no one but him. The world could have collapsed around us, and I wouldn't have noticed. The fleeting brush of hands had grown into something that could no longer be dismissed. It had become a fire in the silence, a dangerous connection neither of us could resist. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning. The hours that followed were not part of any plan. Nothing had been arranged, no words exchanged to shape what was about to happen. Yet everything felt as though it had been written long before that night, as though fate itself had led every step, every glance, every breath to this very moment. When our lips finally met, it wasn't clumsy or uncertain. It was inevitable. The tension that had built from a single touch spilled over in a rush of heat, a collision of hunger and tenderness that left no room for doubt. His mouth found mine with urgency, but it was not rushed. It was searching, tasting, claiming, as if he had been waiting just as long as I had. The sound of my own breath caught in my throat, dissolving into whispers that barely escaped between kisses. His hands traced the shape of my face, then slipped lower, fingers pressing into my back, pulling me closer until I was certain there was no space left between us. My body melted against his, every nerve alive, every inch ignited as though fire had been poured beneath my skin. The world outside vanished, the noise of the city, the movement of others, even time itself disappeared into silence. All that existed was the rhythm of our bodies and the fire that burned hotter with every touch. His lips moved from mine down to the curve of my neck, leaving trails that made my knees weaken. My hands found him in return, exploring, learning, trembling with the weight of desire that had been locked away too long. There was no conversation. Words would have been clumsy, unnecessary. The only language we needed was touch, and it spoke louder than anything we could have said. His hands slid along my arms, down my waist, pausing at the places that made me gasp, places that reminded me I was still a woman who could be undone by the right kind of touch. He seemed to know instinctively, every move deliberate, as if he had been created to find every hidden part of me that longed to be awakened. The night wrapped around us, thick with heat, shadows bending in time with our movements. I could hear his breath, quick and uneven, matching the rhythm of my own. My heart thundered, and yet I felt no fear, only surrender, only the knowledge that I wanted this more than I had wanted anything in years. His body pressed into mine, firm yet gentle, every action asking, and every answer given in the way I leaned closer, the way I clung to him, as if letting go would mean losing something I couldn't survive without. Clothes slipped away as naturally as night falling over the sky. There was nothing hurried, nothing careless about it. Each layer removed felt like another wall breaking, another secret revealed, until there was nothing left but skin and honesty. My body pressed against his, warm and trembling, and when his hands moved over me, it felt less like exploration and more like recognition, as though he wasn't discovering me, but remembering me, as though he already knew. When he entered me, it was not just the joining of bodies. It was an unspoken vow, a surrender to something larger than either of us. My breath broke into cries I couldn't hold back, the sound swallowed by his mouth as he kissed me deeply, moving with a rhythm that carried both urgency and reverence. Every thrust, every gasp, every whispered wordless sound pulled me deeper into him, until I no longer knew where he ended and I began. The fire consumed us. My nails dug into his skin, his grip tightened on my hips, and together we moved as though the world depended on it. Each moment burned brighter, built higher, until release crashed through me like a wave, pulling me under, drowning me in ecstasy so raw it left me trembling. He followed, his body shaking against mine, breath hot against my ear as he let go with me, both of us collapsing into the aftermath of something that felt bigger than passion, bigger than desire, We lay there in silence, bodies entwined, hearts pounding in unison. My skin was damp, my limbs heavy, but my soul felt weightless, lifted by the truth of what had just happened. I didn't need to ask what it meant. I didn't need him to say anything. I already knew. That night wasn't an accident, and it wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was destiny unfolding, a love written in the language of fire and skin and breath. As the night faded into the first light of morning, I knew I would never be the same. The stranger on the train was no longer a stranger. He was a part of me now, carved into my body, my memory, my very being. That night had not been planned, not spoken, yet it was everything I had been waiting for, everything I had thought I had lost. It was the night that made the world disappear, and it was the night that changed everything. From that moment, nothing returned to the way it had been before. Life had a rhythm, a pattern I could follow without thought, a script I had learned to recite day after day. But after that touch on the train, after the fire it lit inside me, the pattern unraveled. I could not force myself back into the skin I had worn before. That one moment became a doorway, and once I stepped through it, there was no returning. Every morning after, the train felt different. I had taken the same ride for years, barely noticing the faces around me, barely caring who came and who went. Now, every sound, every motion, every flicker of movement carried new weight. My eyes searched for him without permission, my body alive with anticipation even before he appeared. The crowd didn't matter anymore. The journey wasn't about getting somewhere. It was about finding him again, about reliving the spark that had changed me. The memory of that first touch played endlessly in my mind. It wasn't simply about skin against skin. It was the way it had awakened me, the way it told me I was still capable of feeling, still capable of wanting. I hadn't realized how much I had been starving until he gave me that taste. And once hunger wakes, it does not go back to sleep. When our eyes met again, the world shifted once more. It wasn't surprise this time. It was recognition, a silent confession that we both knew something irreversible had already happened. He didn't need to speak, and neither did I. We carried the truth in our stares, in the way our bodies leaned toward one another, as though drawn by something greater than choice. Every stolen glance, every brush of his arm against mine on those crowded rides, every shared silence carved itself deeper into me. Desire grew, not loud or careless, but steady, deliberate, like roots spreading beneath the surface. It wasn't just passion anymore. It was something stronger, something that reached into the heart and refused to let go. The nights we found together after that first one only deepened the truth. His presence filled the empty spaces I had carried for so long, the hollow places I had convinced myself were permanent. With him, there was no pretending, no mask. He touched me in ways that went far beyond the body. He reached the part of me that had been waiting in the dark, aching to be seen, aching to be loved. And it wasn't just the passion, though it consumed us both with a fire I never thought I'd feel again. It was the tenderness that followed, the quiet way his hand lingered on my face, the way his breath settled into mine as though he belonged there. Love doesn't always announce itself with words. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in the way two bodies fit together, as if they've always known each other, as if they were always meant to meet. I began to see life in colors I thought had faded forever. The small things, the way the sun fell on the tracks, the rhythm of footsteps in a station, the simple act of waiting, all of it felt alive again, charged with meaning. The doorway that touch had opened was not only to passion, but to a new way of living, a new way of being. I was no longer numb. I was no longer invisible, even to myself. But with that awakening came the weight of knowing nothing could be the same. The life I had built before, the routines I had once found comfort in, now felt distant, hollow. I could not unlearn the truth his touch had given me. I could not go back to being untouched, unseen, unloved. He became more than a stranger. He became the pulse in my veins, the reason my heart beat faster, the answer to a question I hadn't dared to ask. And yet, what scared me most was not losing him. It was losing the woman I had become because of him. The woman who had found love again, who had found herself again, who had remembered that passion and tenderness were not just memories, but living, breathing truths. I carried him with me in every breath, in every step, in every moment of silence. Even when we weren't together, he was there in the way my skin still tingled from his touch, in the way my lips still burned from his kiss, in the way my body still remembered the fire we had created. That one touch on a train had been the doorway, and once opened, it could never be closed again. It led me to passion, to love, to a connection so deep it altered life itself. It was the touch that changed everything forever. Thank you for being here. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More unforgettable stories await you.